The invitation to the Ashford family reunion arrived in a leather portfolio with gold-embossed lettering. The Ashford family cordially invites you to our annual gathering at Westmount Country Club. I was in Dubai when it arrived, reviewing contracts for a hotel acquisition worth $800 million. My assistant forwarded a scan to my tablet. I called my father from my suite at the Burj Al Arab. Katherine, you received the invitation? I did. Westmount Country Club. That's new. Yes, well, your brother secured us membership last year. Through his wife's family connections. Very exclusive, only 50 families in the state have access. He paused. Which is actually what I wanted to discuss. The club has very strict guest policies. Members only, plus approved spouses. I'm family, Dad. Not a guest. Of course. But the thing is, well, Westmount is old money. Very traditional. They have standards about employment, background, social standing. Your brother's wife comes from the Vandermeer family. Her great-grandfather was a founding member. And Katherine, darling, you work in hospitality. Hotels. It's a service industry. The club members might not understand that you're not actually, working class. He coughed. I wouldn't put it that way. But these people are investment bankers, attorneys, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. They might make assumptions about hotel work that could reflect poorly on the family. I looked out at the Persian Gulf at the private beach where guests paid $5,000 per night for suites. I see. I knew you'd understand. You've always been practical. Besides, these events are terribly dull, just networking and golf talk. You'd be bored. Probably. Excellent. Your brother will be relieved. He's up for some board position at his firm and Eleanor's father will be there. First impressions matter. After I hung up, I sat in my suite and laughed until my sides hurt. Then I made a phone call to someone in my contacts listed as R.W. Westmount. Richard Westmount III. Whose family didn't just belong to Westmount Country Club. They owned it. His great-great-grandfather had built it in 1887. Also, the man whose hotel empire I'd just acquired for $3.2 billion. I'd met Richard 6 months ago during the acquisition negotiations. He was 72, sharp as ever and ready to retire. His children weren't interested in the hotel business, so he'd been looking for the right buyer. Someone who understood luxury hospitality. Someone with vision. Someone like me. I'd built Ashford International Hotels from a single boutique property in San Francisco into a global luxury brand with 47 properties across 6 continents. Started with a $2 million inheritance from my grandmother at 23, parlayed it into a portfolio worth $8 billion by 35. Forbes had called me the new queen of luxury hospitality. My family called it working in hotels. The reunion was 3 weeks away. I spent the time closing deals in Singapore, inspecting a new property in the Maldives, and attending a luxury hospitality conference in Monaco where I gave the keynote address. I also finalized one very specific arrangement with Richard Westmount. The day before the reunion, I flew into Westchester County Airport. Not on a commercial flight, on my company's Bombardier Global 7500, the same jet I used for international business travel. 16-passenger luxury aircraft with a full bedroom suite, conference room, and flight attendant trained in 5-star service. Richard Westmount was my only passenger. He'd requested a ride from his home in Boston to the reunion, to see how the new owner was treating his legacy. We landed at 2 p.m. Saturday. The reunion started at 3 p.m. Richard smiled as we taxied to the private terminal. Your family still doesn't know? My father thinks I check people into Holiday Inns. He laughed, a sound like crackling paper. And your brother? The one who's so proud of his wife's family connection to my club. He's under the impression that the Vandermeer name opens doors. It did. In 1950. These days the Vandermeers are 3 generations removed from money. Eleanor's father is a mid-level investment advisor living off a trust fund. He adjusted his cufflinks. Should be an interesting afternoon. We drove to Westmount in my car, a Mercedes S-Class I kept garaged in New York for visits. Richard sat in the passenger seat looking amused. You know, Katherine, in all my years running the club I've only revoked 3 memberships. Each time for conduct violations. Treating staff poorly, financial irregularities, that sort of thing. That seems fair. I'm considering a fourth revocation. Your brother's wife has been making life difficult for the staff. Complaints about service, demands for special treatment, reminders about her family's founding member status. He glanced at me. I don't tolerate members who abuse their position. Even if they're family? Especially if they're family. Standards matter more than connections. We arrived at Westmount at 2:50 p.m. The club was Georgian architecture perfection. White columns, manicured lawns, a golf course stretching into the distance. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. Mercedes, BMWs, the occasional Bentley. My family's reunion was set up on the terrace overlooking the 18th hole. White tablecloths, champagne service, about 60 people in expensive casual wear. Very country club. Very exclusive. I spotted my family immediately. Dad in a polo and slacks, Mom in a pastel sundress. My brother Christopher and his wife Eleanor holding court near the bar with several other couples. Eleanor was blonde, perfectly coiffed, gesturing expansively as she spoke. I heard fragments of her voice carrying across the terrace. Founding member family, generations of tradition. Standards to maintain. Richard and I walked up the terrace steps together. The club manager, a woman named Patricia who'd worked there 30 years, saw us and went pale. Mr. Westmount. We didn't know you were coming. Surprised me too, Patricia. I'm here as a guest of Ms. Ashford. Every head on the terrace turned. My father's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. My mother's hand flew to her throat. Christopher's face went blank, then red. Eleanor looked between Richard and me, confused. Katherine. Dad's voice cracked. What are you doing here? Attending the family reunion. Isn't that what the invitation was for? But I explained, the club has policies. About guests, yes. But Mr. Westmount invited me personally. As his guest. Richard stepped forward smoothly. Gordon Ashford, I presume? I'm Richard Westmount. Your daughter flew me down from Boston this morning. Magnificent aircraft. Is it new, Katherine? Acquired it last year. Better range than the old one. Eleanor had found her voice. Mr. Westmount, I'm Eleanor Ashford. My great-grandfather was Franklin Vandermeer, yes. Minor member in the 1940s. Never served on the board. Richard's tone was polite but dismissive. Your family hasn't held membership in 30 years. Her face went scarlet. Katherine works in hotels, Christopher said, voice tight. How do you two know each other? Richard raised his eyebrows. Works in hotels? Is that how she described it? Well, hospitality industry, we assumed. Your sister doesn't work in hotels, young man. She owns them. 47 properties worldwide. I should know. She bought my entire company 6 months ago. $3.2 billion. All cash. The silence on the terrace was absolute. Dad's mouth opened and closed. Katherine, you what? I run Ashford International Hotels. Have for 12 years. We're the third largest luxury hotel group globally. I thought you knew. You said you worked in hospitality, Mom whispered. I do. I'm the CEO and majority owner. That's working in hospitality. But you never mentioned billions. You never asked. You heard hotel management and assumed I was a shift supervisor at a Marriott. Christopher was shaking his head. That's impossible. You're 35. You can't own a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm 35 and I built a multi-billion-dollar company. Started with Grandma Helen's inheritance, remember? The $2 million you all said I'd waste on a foolish dream. I smiled. I bought a boutique hotel in San Francisco, renovated it, turned it into the most exclusive property on the West Coast. Sold it for $20 million 3 years later. Bought 3 more properties. Built the brand. Went global. Last year's revenue was $4.2 billion. Eleanor looked like she might be sick. The Ashford Hotels? You're that Ashford. The family name was available. But we stayed at an Ashford hotel in Paris, she said faintly. For our honeymoon. That suite cost €8,000 per night. I know. I set the rates. I turned to Richard. Would you like a tour of the club? I've been considering expanding into the country club space. Might be an interesting acquisition opportunity. He smiled, playing along perfectly. Excellent idea. Patricia, would you show us around? As we walked away, I heard my family erupt into frantic whispers. Patricia led us through the club. The dining rooms, the golf facilities, the spa, the ballrooms. Richard provided commentary, pointing out the history, the architecture, the member amenities. Westmount is profitable, he said, but it's not for sale. Too much family legacy. However, Katherine, if you wanted to invest in the country club market, I could make some introductions. I appreciate that. We returned to the terrace 40 minutes later. My family had barely moved, standing in a tight cluster near the bar. Other reunion guests kept glancing over, whispering. Dad approached first. Katherine, sweetheart, can we talk? Privately. I'm here with Mr. Westmount. I shouldn't be rude to my host. Please. Just for a moment. Richard nodded. Go ahead. I'll get a drink and scandalize your relatives with stories about your business acumen. Dad led me to a quiet corner of the terrace. Mom and Christopher followed, Eleanor trailing behind looking shell-shocked. You own Ashford Hotels, Dad said. It wasn't a question. I do. And you're worth about $5.8 billion according to the last Forbes estimate. Could be more now depending on stock valuations. Mom made a small sound like a wounded animal. Why didn't you tell us? Christopher's voice was angry. All this time you let us think. Let you think what? That I was nobody? That I wasn't good enough for your country club friends? I kept my voice calm. Chris, I tried to tell you about my business. Multiple times. At Thanksgiving 3 years ago I mentioned expanding to Europe. You said travel industry jobs were unstable. At Christmas I brought up the acquisition strategy. Dad asked if I was dating anyone. At Easter I tried to explain the company valuation. You changed the subject to Eleanor's charity luncheon. We didn't know you meant. We thought you were managing a hotel, not owning dozens of them. Because you didn't ask. You heard hotel work and made assumptions. Decided I was too common for Westmount. Not impressive enough to meet Christopher's in-laws. I looked at Eleanor. How's your great-grandfather's founding member legacy working out? Richard says the Vandermeer name hasn't mattered here in decades. She flinched. Katherine, please, Mom said, eyes shining. We made a mistake. A terrible mistake. We should have listened, should have asked about your work. We're so sorry. Are you sorry? Or are you embarrassed that you excluded a billionaire from your country club event? The question hung in the air. We're your family, Dad said quietly. We love you. We're proud of you. We should have shown that before. You should have. But you didn't. You valued Christopher's corporate law job and Eleanor's married name over anything I accomplished. Because what I built didn't fit your definition of success. Richard approached, drink in hand. Katherine, I hate to interrupt, but Patricia just informed me of a situation that requires my attention. Apparently there's been an incident. What kind of incident? A member berating staff. Demands for special treatment based on family connections. I'm told Mrs. Eleanor Ashford was quite forceful with the waitstaff about champagne service not meeting her standards. Eleanor went white. I was just. Patricia says this is the 4th complaint in 3 months. The staff has been very patient, but I don't tolerate abuse of my employees. Richard's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Mr. and Mrs. Christopher Ashford, I'm afraid I'm revoking your membership, effective immediately. You'll receive formal notice next week. Christopher's face went from red to purple. You can't. My wife's family. Your wife's family hasn't held influence here since Truman was president. And even if they did, standards of conduct apply to everyone. He turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Gordon Ashford, you're guests of your son's membership. That membership no longer exists. You'll need to leave the premises as well. This is outrageous, Eleanor sputtered. Katherine, tell him, you two are friends. Make him change his mind. I looked at her for a long moment. Mr. Westmount runs his club according to his standards. I respect that. If the staff reported problems, I'm sure he's making the right call. But we're family, your family. You excluded me from this event because I wasn't good enough for your club. Because my success didn't look like what you expected. Now you want me to intervene on your behalf. I shook my head. I don't think so. Richard gestured to Patricia. Please escort these 4 off the property. The rest of the Ashford family may stay. This is their reunion after all. Just not these particular members. Patricia moved forward with 2 security staff. My family stood frozen, then began walking toward the exit. Eleanor was crying. Christopher looked murderous. My parents just looked broken. As they reached the terrace steps, Dad turned back. Katherine. Goodbye, Dad. Enjoy explaining to the relatives why you left your own family reunion. I watched them disappear into the parking lot, then turned to Richard. That was perhaps more dramatic than necessary. Perhaps. But tremendously satisfying. He raised his glass. To standards. And to knowing your worth, regardless of whether your family recognizes it. I'll drink to that. We spent the next hour at the reunion. Richard introduced me to other members, told stories about my business success, made sure everyone knew exactly who Katherine Ashford was. The relatives who remained were fascinated, asking about my hotels, my properties, my expansion plans. By the time I left, the entire family knew the truth. The quiet daughter who worked in hotels was actually a billionaire CEO who'd built a global empire while her family assumed she was booking reservations. I flew back to New York that evening, Richard in the passenger seat, both of us satisfied with the day's work. Your family will try to reconcile, he said as we prepared for takeoff. I know. Will you let them? I watched the runway lights blur past as we lifted into the sky. Maybe. Someday. If they can learn to value me for who I actually am, not who they assumed I was. And if they can't? Then I'll be fine. I built an empire without their support. I don't need their approval to know my worth. He smiled. Spoken like a true success story. My phone buzzed with text. 17 messages from various relatives. 3 from my parents. 5 from Christopher. All variations of please call, and we need to talk, and we didn't know. I put the phone on airplane mode and looked out at the clouds. They didn't know because they'd never bothered to ask. And that said everything I needed to know about what I was worth to them.